and welcome to Money Matters TV and our show called Growth Stories, where we hear from secrets and advice of entrepreneurs and sharing their advice on what business owners need to know to grow. I'm your host, Mike Verrill, owner of VPE Advisors, growth strategy and M&A consultant to private businesses and their owners. The problem for business owners is a lack of focus and resources on planning and executing their business transition. The solution is a three-step process that defines vision, builds a plan for success, and manages the execution on their terms. 70 to 90% of M&A deals fail. Take the necessary steps to ensure yours don't. From time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences, healthcare, or technology matters or companies may be discussed on this show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, the information may no longer be relevant. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. Before we share our guest today and interview the next guest, we don't have any questions, but I just wanted to provide the information on how you can send questions for a future episode. And here's how to submit those questions.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
We have a special treat today. Our guest is someone who we have had the benefit of getting to know very well. Longtime co-host Katie Wenger joins us for Ghost Stories. It's a privilege to have her with us as the Vice President of Laurkat Consulting, a family affair and very much the entrepreneurial opportunity we have discussed with so many of our guests. Katie, it's great to have you back as a guest. It's very exciting. Thanks for joining me for Growth Stories.
Hey, Mike, it's great to be back. Yeah, it's truly a privilege to be kind of in the entrepreneurial seat today. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, the tables have turned, right?
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
So we'll get into your background and a little bit of kind of the thought process and how things are going. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit more about Laurkat Consulting, the type of work you guys do, the type of customers you work with?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So a lot of what we do is probably some of the stuff you see, but you never have to think about, and that is the power industrial world. So what that means is we help big industrial generators, transformers, switchgear, all that electrical equipment be bought and sold, and we help our customers find really unique solutions for their needs. We've seen this world kind of transform over the last few years. You know, typically you would see generators be utilized in a hospital setting or some type of backup energy. But with the world of data that we live in today, it's a use case that's being utilized more and more as people really are heavily reliant on their power. So it's a really exciting industry to be a part of and, jump right into. So Laurkat really is a solutionary person, we say a tool in a toolbox. We're somebody to come in, help our customers find the right solution in that power industrial world. So, it's been an exciting journey so far.
Are they power companies? Are they big manufacturers who have plants that rely on power? You mentioned data backup, so I would guess big data storage centers. Are those your types of clients?
Yeah, all of the above. So where we come in is we oftentimes are procuring that equipment. So let's say you're a big office developer and you have the need for backup power. You might be a hospital, you might be an industrial building. We stay out of the residential world. However, apartment buildings oftentimes have large generators. So we'll help procure for that. But then also on the flip side, a lot of space users, i.e., big industrial cold storage areas or big hospitals, they'll have existing equipment that might be utilized and they need to upgrade in some capacity. We'll go ahead and buy that equipment and sell it to customers that may need it. Where we've seen just a lot of change is in the data world. So if you think about everything you have on your computer, whether it's work or personal, on your iPhone or other types of handheld devices, all of that information is stored in data centers or the cloud. And a lot of development we're seeing and a lot of need for this equipment is in that data center world. So we're working on, a ton of different projects supporting that industry as well. So it's been interesting. We work with all types of different customers, but the primary kind of end user is somebody that has that requirement for backup power or, supporting their existing infrastructure with that power requirement. So typically it's that end user that we're dealing with, and the project managers or contractors who are working on those projects.
Gotcha. And are you working with clients across the country, or are you focused on a geographic region?
Yeah, I would say just because we're in the Philadelphia region, we're seeing a lot of volume here locally, and that's based on just people we know, projects we know about. But we have the capacity to work nationally. I work with my father, which I know we'll get into a lot of the background of the company, who has been in this industry for probably about 30 years. And we have a few other partners that collectively have about 100 years of industry experience. So we built strong relationships throughout the years throughout the country. We worked on some projects even internationally as well, which have been really exciting. But for the most part, most of our volume is here on the East Coast, really Maine to Florida. But we have done some projects throughout the country, whether it's the Midwest, even California, and across the pond as well. So all over the place.
That's great. Well, it's very exciting. Well, obviously we'll dig in and learn more, but glad to hear it, and good to know more about Laurkat. So, I know folks have been watching this segment for a long time, probably know a little bit more about your background, but for new people joining us or people who haven't watched this long, maybe just give us a sense of where you grew up, what your family life was like, where you went to school, what you studied, those sorts of things, just to give some background on kind of how you came to where you are today.
Yeah, I would be happy to. So I am a Philadelphian born and raised. I'm a Delco girl, and that I take with pride. We're blue collar, hardworking, family oriented people in the Delaware County area of Pennsylvania. And I think that type of value system and mentality has really transcended with me throughout the years. And so I grew up in a family. I have an older sister and two wonderful parents who have done nothing but really support my growth and learning. I would say education is one of our number one priorities. So I went to a small all-girls school, which really nurtured me and helped me grow. And then I went on to Franklin and Marshall College. I was also a softball player. So if you know anything about pitching and softball, we're tough girls. And I learned a lot of lessons that I use every day in my new entrepreneurial journey, and even beforehand, that I've learned on the softball field throughout my years playing there. I spent about 7 years in the commercial real estate industry with a large corporate player, CBRE. I learned so much. It's unbelievable how much I learned in that role. And I miss all my wonderful colleagues very much. But I think in this new role, I'm really able to apply some of that grittiness and that entrepreneurial kind of skill set that I've always been wanting to learn and grow. So it's been really fascinating to see kind of my journey to this point, and rely on a lot of the lessons I've had throughout my upbringing, throughout my softball years, and even in my CBRE years. So that's kind of my background, and really what led me to here is, about I would say 6 years ago, my father, who's one of my biggest mentors and coaches and friends, he had an opportunity and really just the gumption to go out and try to start his own business with really no idea where it would take him. And, it continued to grow, and he continued to see an opportunity and move towards it. And it's grown to a capacity where I'm able to jump in and see what else we can do as a dynamic duo. So, certainly, working in a family business, working with my father has been a big adjustment, but also an amazing experience to continue to be mentored and coached through him, in addition to all those years I had before growing up.
Awesome. That's really cool opportunity to work with your father. So you mentioned CBRE. I mean, that's where we spend a lot of our time while you're there. And we've talked to other entrepreneurs who have made that jump from the big corporate job. Sounds like your father went through that, so he was probably very
Yes.
helpful in helping you think through that. But what was that like? Can it give us a little insight into, how you thought about did he come to you, 2 years ago and you say, Dad, it's not the right time? Like, did you have to build up to it? Or did you just kind of reach a point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. He needs me. I'm ready. Like, how did that all come about?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I think I grew a true love for the industry that I was in, and my teammates were incredibly wonderful. My colleagues, I continued to learn and grow in that environment. But I think deep down inside me, I knew that this opportunity was once in a lifetime. It was going to be something that I only had a small window to really be able to do and learn and grow it to from my father who, he's in his 60s. He's not somebody that wants to work tooth and nail for the rest of his life. So I think there's a kind of a window where he would be able to teach me a lot of what I would need to learn. And then also a window in my life where I would be able to jump right in and work crazy hours and really grow in a way that I want to grow in this capacity. So I think it was really difficult because, that previous position was a really good support system that I had, great opportunity. But I think there was always something in me that said, I want to lead something. I want to grow and be that true entrepreneur. And maybe it was a little bit of the conversations we've had with so many wonderful entrepreneurs on this show. And I think also just people I've met throughout my years at CBRE. I've met so many wonderful business owners, and I think I always admired them and, wanted to emulate them in some way. And when you're in that larger corporate environment, it's a little harder. Of course, you're a business person, you're working really hard and you're building something, but at the end of the day, it's a corporation. And whereas in this opportunity, it was something that I would be in charge of one day or have some equity in. I think, like I said, back to those Delco familial roots, the opportunity to work with my father and to build something that was everlasting for him and our family, I think was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So it came with, many nights of me just sitting there thinking, what the heck am I doing? And, having those difficult conversations with people I deeply respect and care about. But I think listening to my intuition and my inner, gut, I think it was a decision that I had to make. And I'm really proud of myself and just excited for the opportunity in front of me. So a long-winded way of saying it was difficult, but, so far it's been incredibly rewarding.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you mentioned your background. Obviously, I'm always a fan of the sports analogy, and I think those experiences really help you in business and certainly to be an entrepreneur, right? Because you at the end of the day, you have to motivate yourself on the athletic field, on the softball field, whatever it is, right? So those skills are innate, probably developed over time, and just how you were raised and part of who you are. Was there anything specific? Were there specific skills that have helped you make this transformation from CBRE that you learned like through your 7-year business career there?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many. I mean, I think something that I learned on the softball field, and it's kind of my favorite when I coach girls these in my now I'm washed up, but when I do coach young girls about softball, I always say this to them because I think it's just a really good life lesson. And there's kind of this theory in softball when you're playing the infield, if you wait for the ball to come to you, it's really likely that that hit's going to hit a rock or it's going to bounce over your shoulder and you're going to completely miss fielding that ball and making a successful play to get the batter out. But if you play the ball and you don't let the ball play you and you go get it, you're more likely to have a successful, clean kind of play and get the batter out. And I think that that theory of don't let the ball play you and go get it is something that sticks with me so deeply. And I think it's transcended through both my career and time at CBRE, but also now it's kind of the mentality that, what you want in life and what your goals are for yourself, they're not just going to come to you. And if you let them kind of come to you, it might not be exactly the outcome that you want. But if you have those opportunities to go and get it and really be kind of the one driving that decision, you're more likely going to get that outcome that you want. So I think when it came to that decision making, and thinking about what I want in my business career and what I want for my future. I think that kind of theory really molded me. And then I think on the flip side, just really respecting, all of your colleagues and teammates and making sure that everybody understands kind of the reasoning as to why you're pivoting or why you're making that change, was really important. And I think, through my career in softball, there was many times where you have difficult conversations or having to make decisions that are best for yourself and best for kind of the overall outcome that you want. And having that history of conversations helped prepare me, but it never perfectly prepares you to make that change. I'm sure there's tremendous other skill sets that kind of came from that softball learning, but I think for me, those are the two that really stick out. It's really just kind of having that confidence and that ability to make difficult decisions that you ultimately think are going to be what's best. And then secondarily, just really being the driver of your life. And, when you have those opportunities to go make it happen, you do, and you jump on it. So those are the two biggest lessons, I would say.
That's awesome. You talked about kind of the learning curve and all of that earlier on, but what was the actual transition like? From day one to where you are now, like, what was that learning curve? Is it a totally new industry? Are there, skill sets that you bring from your prior role? Obviously, in real estate, you're dealing probably with some of the similar type clients, right? You have a similar client base, folks that are, big facilities using power, backup power, that sort of thing. So you might even have be able to rely on a client list. But what was the transition like kind of day one? And then, what were some of the things that you learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult, I would say, just in that, there's always, once you learn something, you realize how much you don't know. And I think what's interesting about the real estate space is you touch a lot of different industries. And then the biggest thing you learn is just the development process and how decisions are made, whether it's companies, whether it's developers, or kind of those folks that may be in between. So I think having that experience helped me tremendously understand where Laurkat being we come into play, and kind of the timeline. So oftentimes, like I said, we're working with developers, whether they're decommissioning space and they're getting rid of equipment, we may buy it from them, or if they're going to put certain tenants into space and they need certain equipment. So I think having that experience has really helped me understand at what point we need to be involved and who we need to be talking to. So that's been really helpful. And then I think ultimately, with the real estate world and kind of the role I was, in a tenant advisory brokerage role, where you are taking a set of goals and executing it on behalf of your client. You learn a lot in kind of the project management, and execution side of the transaction, which I utilize often in my current role. So really understanding, especially in sales, what it takes to kind of put yourself out there to go get clients, but then also how to really execute and take care of them. And, there's a rule when my dad has taught me, if your phone rings twice, you're already too late to answer the call. So it's always being available for your customer, really ensuring that they feel that they are using a trusted advisor. And I think that's similar to the real estate world, but making sure that you execute and you deliver on what you promise. And, really what has changed, I would say, and is very similar, is just, it's the two of us right now, my father and I. And if we say we're going to do something, we have to deliver, or else that customer may never, go and utilize us in the future. So really just making sure we set our own expectations correctly and help set theirs and execute on whatever we say we can do. So certainly some synergies between the industry. And like I said, there's so much I learned about the business world, and about companies and really the Philadelphia region, through my past role, that I'm really utilizing and leaning on in this current role. And I think it's going to continue to develop, as the years come on and I continue to have different and new experiences. But it's cool to see kind of how two industries interact, even though they're completely different. I will say some of the challenges, of course, are just, the learning of the lingo and understanding, equipment and how that is utilized. By no means am I an engineer, and there's so many intelligent, incredibly intelligent engineers out there. So finding the right people in our network to lean on when I have questions has been really essential in these early years. And of course, having my father as a mentor and asking him questions with his experience, but then also finding people that I can make friends with, and or colleagues are out there that I can really lean on when I have more technical questions that I might need help with. So I've done a lot of reading, I would say, as well. Just reading books about owning your own business, books about power, industrial power, and how that all comes into the mix. So fortunately, it's been there's so much information out there to really study, in addition to kind of just baptism by fire and jumping into transactions and learning.
That's awesome. What a great experience. So I was just curious. Well, first of all, I will say that, I think you mentioned a common thread that we've heard from many entrepreneurs, and no matter what you do, understanding a sales process and how to go out and interact with customers, and then, to find new customers, and then, what it takes to keep customers. Those seem to be, like I said, the common thread for entrepreneurs who are successful in growing a business. I think those skill sets transcend anything you do, right, in business. So
Absolutely.
that's a great foundation. Your dad must be very happy to have that come along with you as you enter the business. I was curious. Obviously, we've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and had their ups and downs, and the success stories and the failures. And I was wondering, like, based on that, were there expectations? Were there surprises? Were you like, oh, now, yeah, so and so said that and kind of resonates with me now, or wow, nobody told me this was going to be something I'd have to deal with. Like anything
Yeah,
like that?
I mean, what's great? I have so much respect for so many entrepreneurs, because I think coming from that bigger company, if I ever had a question, there was somebody whose job it was to focus, whether it's HR, payroll, accounting, any of those very important sides to the business world. And I think where I found myself and continue to find myself is, really trying to learn everything, but also really finding experts that can help support us, so we can do what is at the crux of our business, and helping our customers. So I think there is just so much to running a business that I had the privilege of not having to deal with being at a big company. So now transitioning to, a very small familial company, you're just kind of the tech person, the marketing person, the IT person. So it's really wearing, all of those hats. And I think that's something that has always stuck out to me when you hear different entrepreneurs and those amazing startup stories. I'm reading Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, that my colleague from my old role gave me. And it's amazing to hear the similar track record of somebody who's built something like Nike. They did everything. They do everything at first. And that's just the reality of kind of being in that startup entrepreneurial role. With that said, I think, really learning to network and lean on so many people you meet in the community who just want to see you succeed, and help. I think, that's something that's really important. And I think, anytime I can help somebody in this type of role, that's a great opportunity. And then hopefully one day it's kind of a pay it forward. When I need help, there's somebody I can rely on for that same purpose. So, wearing those different hats is something I always hear about. And I certainly feel that way since this transition, but it's been really fun to kind of figure it all out and do it in the way that works best for us. And, anytime, my father has an IT problem, somehow I'm the IT technician, but I'm not an IT person whatsoever. So there's certainly times where you're just giggling along the way as well.
That was my summer beach read, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. That
Yeah,
was an incredible book. You really get the seat of your pants, sense that entrepreneurs go through, right? I mean, he was running from paycheck to paycheck for many, many more years than you ever thought that was possible in the history of Nike. So,
it's
that's definitely
incredible.
a great inspiration, and I really enjoyed the book. I'm sure you're enjoying it too. And
Oh,
certainly
absolutely.
mirrored a lot of the conversations we've had with different entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any story that you can remember, just reminiscing a little bit, as we look back on, was there anybody in particular that we interviewed that jumped out at you that you maybe recognize or remember?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there were so many. I mean, I think one person that really kind of changed, and as I sit here, I'm blanking on her name, and I will pull it up because I know it. I should have wrote it down, but when we were speaking with a woman, and I apologize, I don't remember her name, but we were speaking with a woman who was really on the community side of kind of bootstrapping the it was the shelter in downtown Philadelphia. Yes, thank you so much. I apologize. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I mean, what an incredible woman and just story. And I think that, anytime I kind of run into challenging situations or feel as though I can't figure it out, I think about entrepreneurs in those types of situations and nonprofit type of situations where there's way more on the line than kind of some of the items I'm dealing with, and think about how they maybe lean on their community or just kind of figure it out. And I think ultimately, when you kind of take a step back and think about kind of problems or frustrations you might be having, and think about the big picture of the world, it helps alleviate that stress or that tension, and you realize that it's solvable, and that there's ways to navigate, and leaning on your community is really important. So that's certainly a lesson I learned. And I think, speaking with her was such a wonderful experience. But there's been just so many tremendous people. And I think that's the other lesson, is that there's a lot of really smart, amazing, ambitious people in our community. And you don't have to do it all alone. You can talk to those folks. You can learn from those folks. So really that networking aspect is super important. And just hearing people's stories can oftentimes teach you a lot about how to move forward in your own role.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Kathy Desmond from Hopeful, longtime
Yes,
friend, and
thank you.
that was a very memorable interview. We have about a minute left. It's probably too short to really give any in-depth answer, but what's one or two tips that you would give to somebody thinking about making the leap from a big corporate job to something very entrepreneurial like Laurkat?
Yeah, I would say just talk about your goals with your trusted, friends or colleagues, and talk through kind of what your goals are and why you feel that way, and why you want to make that switch. And I think that's something I didn't do. I probably could have done a better job of, and I think that would have helped in my transition as well. But I also think, just go for it. And there's never going to be the perfect time or perfect situation. And sometimes a window of opportunity comes, and if you don't jump on it, it might change or it might not be there anymore. So sometimes you really got to take that risk and go for it. One of my favorite quotes from this Shoe Dog book so far is a quote. He says, Phil Knight says, if you don't grow, you die. And I think that's
Right,
a really strict way and black and white way of thinking it, but it's so simple, but it's so true that if you're not evolving and changing and growing, there's really no other option. We're all getting older, we're
right.
all changing every day. So I'm applying it to business is similar. If you don't grow as a business, if you don't evolve, if you don't change, your business stays stagnant, and it just may never keep up with the world. So I think sometimes you as an individual or a business person or a human, you just got to keep growing, and amazing opportunities come from that.
Right. Well, that was, the whole idea of growth stories. So, because I believe that too, and I want to talk to people who do as well. Katie, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us for Growth
Thank you
Stories.
for having me.
Really appreciate it. The next guest on Money Matters TV is George Rogers, president of Rogers Software Solutions. As a reminder, you can download the podcast from iTunes and Stitcher, as well as see programs on our YouTube channel, money-matterstv.com. Thank you for joining us for Growth Stories.